Hi all. There's a lot going on at the moment in the organisation, and occasionally we get these meetings which are there to disseminate information. It's quite a tough job, I think, to provide information in this scenario, because you want to provide certainty, and it's difficult to provide certainty when you don't have certainty yourself, as the options are still open. So there's a lot of change coming, and changes that need to be made. However, because decisions haven't been made yet, we can't really be told what those changes will be. So those meetings, and this meeting that I attended, which is a series of meetings, while being well-intentioned to take us on our journey and remove that uncertainty, to provide information, because obviously people talk, so we know changes are afoot. This meeting to remove uncertainty can actually end up creating more uncertainty just by the nature of the fact that these decisions haven't been made. There's a lot of open questions, there's a lot of options, and some of those decisions will be made and will affect people, so it's understandable people want answers. But as I said, the organisation is not in a position to provide those answers, simply provide assurances. And that balance between providing assurance and creating uncertainty is a really tough one to get right. Later I met with a person who is a lead of one of the 3 teams in my area. I'm planning an away day with the team in a couple of months' time. I met with him to talk to him about potential ideas for the away day, what his thoughts were, essentially to bring him on board as the lead for that team, to make sure I coordinated with that lead in terms of ensuring planned activities would be relevant to his team as well as just my team or the other team on the platform, which I'm slightly more familiar with. I'll talk a bit more about the away day in future talks. Then I ran a retro for my team. I created a Eurovision theme. Having never watched Eurovision myself, this was a bit of a risk, but the team suggested a theme, so I gave it a go. I always like to do themes on these retros. I mean, essentially you're always asking the same questions with retros. You're always asking what went well, what could be better, and what do you want to stop doing. So it's nice to sometimes mix it up with a theme of some sort. Gets a bit more interesting, makes it easier to talk to people about stuff, and have an entertaining icebreaker, etc, etc. People generally just ease up a little bit more, with a bit of a fun theme. And a couple of things came out of the retro. We talked about ways to keep motivation going when you have a long drawn out piece of work. The project we're doing at the moment is quite a long drawn out piece of work, so we discussed ideas on how to continue to maintain motivation. Now there's only 6 or so weeks left for this project, and we'll be finished, I think. And one of the things that came out of this was moving from a 4-week retro to a 2-week retro, and I think that's a super good idea, so I'm going to put that in place. We're also going to look at using Friday stand-up as a bit of a mini demo, just to give people the opportunity to show off their work, show what they've done over the week, and use that as a bit of, again, motivation, a bit of a driver of progress. We used to have a weekly check-in involving all 3 teams, and that's dropped off for a number of reasons. The team were keen to get that back in, so I've added that back in as a fortnightly check-in. And again, I think that's going to help in terms of bringing the team together, increasing morale, and so on. Later I had a session on decommissioning a large piece of software that we use, which is costing us a fair bit of money. It's involved in a lot of things we're doing, and it's a year-long project. So this is the big project that's on at the moment in terms of decommissioning this particular software. And later on I had another meeting looking at the timeline for that, and then another meeting which is a check-in on progress for that, and then another one to review the plan with our product lead. So there's a lot of meetings in this week about decommissioning this particular piece of software, and this is normal when it comes to something being kicked off, especially something this big is being kicked off, just to get the momentum going. So we've got planned for the discovery phase. I'm also part of a pairing and sharing group where we have the opportunity to meet different disciplines within the organisation. Currently I'm meeting with a user researcher who's been walking me through what they do in user research. One of the interesting things is user reliability. How do you find out if users are actually giving you truthful answers? I asked them, how do you find out from users if an idea is any good, for example? How can you trust the user to answer that correctly or answer that honestly? His answer was very insightful. He said that generally people just tell you what they think you want to hear. So you'll come up with an idea and say, that looks like a great idea. But in reality, they would never buy into it. So what you should be doing, you should be looking at their past experiences. First of all, what problem is your idea solving? And then what kind of things have they purchased into in the past to solve that sort of problem? So I thought that was a really interesting chat with the user researcher. Later in the week, I used my wellbeing hour to spend a bit of time in the garden. I've got a pizza oven, which I built. I used that time to perfect my pizza technique. So I've been trying different types of wood, trying wood pellets, different spacing of woods within the pizza oven. So I used to have the fire at the back only, and now I've got the fire on either side, and have the pizza being baked in the middle, but with the fire on the sides, and that gives me a bit more space to push the pizza into the oven, a bit further into the oven. And that's actually helped massively in terms of producing better heat, better coverage. I also chopped the wood into smaller pieces, so it's easier to add and remove pieces of wood rather than having larger chunks burning, which will always be either too hot or not hot enough. Essentially, better temperature control. So there's a few things I've been trying over the past few weeks, and then yesterday thought I'd take a bit of time to experiment further. Again, quite grateful to the organisation for providing that wellbeing hour to allow me to do that within my work time. Then I have my usual line manager meeting at the end of the week. I'm moving teams to a different team soon. I'm not sure which team that's going to be, but every so often we have the opportunity to move teams, and I put myself forward wanting to change teams. I put myself forward a few months ago, and it's finally going to come about. I've been on this team for about a year and 3 months, so it's a good time for me to move on to a different team within the same organisation. And I'll probably be moving around that time I finish this current large project that I'm working on. So that works out pretty well. I've always experienced most significant periods of growth when I've changed teams, because you can sort of draw a line under where you were, pick out your strengths, identify what you want to work on most. It's also the case that it's very easy to fall into the same ways of working with the same people, and real growth takes place often when you're put in novel situations, as you don't fall into those grooves of behaviour that you've created over time. Not that I couldn't have continued to grow and develop in my current team, but just starting fresh makes you question how you do everything, and certainly after a year and 3 months, there's certain parts of our role that are so routine that it's really hard to reflect on them. But again, with awareness that this is the case, you can force yourself to reflect on these sort of routine ways of working. I also continued the documentation group this week. I've been running that for a while now. We picked up that documentation was an issue in the team, and we've been working to remedy that. So, for example, if you're a developer and you pick up a piece of work and then you move to a different piece of work, you might return to that same initial piece of work, or it might be a different developer who returns to that picks up that piece of work that you left off. The documentation is key in ensuring a quick pickup time and to soften the blow of context switching. So we're in the final stages, after a fair bit of research and trying new structures within the team, we're in the final stages of moving items to their new structure. It's been a satisfying journey, but it's been a lot more involved than I thought it'd be. But it's exposed me to a lot of interesting ideas, such as tree jacking, which is a user research method. Then, towards the end of the week, we looked at some risk reporting. I met with the leads, and we went through the risk register that I'd put together previously, and we looked at what the risks are, what needs to be updated, what needs to be added, etc. And as a group, we sort of made sure we're all aware of the risks, and we understand what risks to highlight to the leads in the delivery report, which goes out every month. I'll do a bit more on the delivery report next week, as I'm putting it together next week. And that was my week. Thanks for listening. Tune in again, same time next week.